Welcome back to An Emerging Forest on the Spiritual Unity Radio Network. We hope everyone was able to stretch their legs and get a drink. And now, back to Alan.
Welcome back, everyone. And as I said before, and I've said it a million times, but I'll continue to say it, this is an open program. It is being broadcast live if you're listening to me. And it is Sunday night, November the 11th, 2018, at 9:36 p.m. on the eastern U.S. coast. If it's that time and you want to call in and be on the show, 646-564-9714. And we've got about 23 and a half minutes left in the show. A little bit less than that, probably. But what I motivated in the first half hour was a simplification of justification for why you're going in your own direction, and a drastic simplification of the process of self-respect, and why when you see someone who's going in a different direction and you're in maybe society's mainstream, you can ask them to justify themselves, but they don't have to. Maybe they didn't take the time to, maybe they did take the time to. But they don't have to justify why they're going in a particular direction. Now, society, if that person is outside of certain bounds, that's just the society will try to reach out to that person and point to their rule book and say, you're out of bounds. You need to justify yourself. But that person doesn't have to justify themselves. They are a way going in a particular direction, and their way is valid, and their way is part of an emerging forest. Their way is possible. So as much as we would hold our nose or as much as we would shake our head when looking at their way is for the betterment of the fertility of all of an emerging forest. So even as much as we look at the present overall social way and we say, I want to participate in, it is something that is a way, is a valid way. It is not wrong. It is not the ways within the present way are not invalid. They're not unjust. They are ways. So I don't come from the perspective of making a consensus and saying this is the correct way, all of these other ways are now illegal. No, I come from the perspective of saying all of the ways are valid, all of the ways should exist, but what's the balance between them? So the balance between nature and corporate devouring of nature for profit is not well done these days. That's my opinion. Even if I went in another direction and oppressed the corporate world, we'd just have a wrestling match. So, in summary, because I'm not sure how long this summary is going to take me to make as short as possible. In summary, and say, I don't feel right going in the way of the present society, but I need to be able to tell other people why I'm walking away. I couldn't tell the people at my work why I was walking away in 2005. All I said to them with tears in my eyes when I was talking to the heads of the company was, I feel I must go in a different direction. Don't understand it. I just have to go. Sounded a little bit better, but understanding is not the point. Feeling that you need to go do something else, or feeling that. So that's another point that I want to bring up. It's a good thing I started this summary a little early. Having a rational story in your life. First I went to high school, then I went to college, and I got a PhD and so, and then I went and I worked for this company. And then as a natural outgrowth of that, I went and worked for this other company. Then I started my own business as a result of that. That's an arc, and you can basically say, people, you can tell your story to people. It's less, people will be able to say, oh, I can relate to your story. Whereas it's less logical, rational, linear to say, well, I went to this area and I did 3 days of work and I had a feeling that I needed to go someplace else. So I went someplace else and I did these things, and you didn't stay very long in any one area, and maybe you were scattering your time learning different skills, many, many different skills, or you didn't even understand the theme of anything you were doing. It just seemed, like a hodgepodge of a life. And that is closer, or to me, feels closer to just following your feelings. Hey, I put a lot of effort into doing this, but I don't feel it anymore. Or I want to disengage from doing business with that person, so I'm just going to drop all that work. Or that part of society, I don't want to engage with that part of society. So even though I put all this effort and all this money and all this time into it, I see it from a different way now. I see it from a different angle now, and I want to disengage. So even when someone is very young, or regardless of the age of that person, if they come to a respect for themselves, or all of a sudden they get a light in their eye and they're basically like, I'm going to follow what I believe. I'm going to follow what I feel. Trying to get at tonight. A respect for yourself. A respect for your capital S, capital E, capital L, self. That is the self that I'm talking about. The orchestrator, basically saying what some people, some people in the consensus society want there to be a consensus God, a single God. And they relate that to the one. And they say we're all connected to the one. No, I say we're all connected to ourselves. We all have ourself based on our past experience. And that is the capital G-O-D that we each follow, and they're not the same. bringing that together and calling it a consensus God, in my opinion, power grabbing. It's basically saying, well, your God is my God, so come to my church and believe what's in this book, because my God, because your God wrote this down. When they wrote it down, and they're just trying to get you to come to their church and be in the consensus society. Thank you all so much for listening to tonight's episode. I hope you got something out of it. I hope I was able to lift your mind out of its present perspective and put another perspective into it. I'm not here to say your way is wrong. Your way is completely right. I'm basically here to say, hey, maybe you have different feelings and you haven't been paying attention to those feelings. And those ways are right too. I'm not here to say that the present society's way is wrong. I'm here to continue to be a fan and be a card-carrying member of the Spiritual Unity Radio Network's main concept of all manifestations of the divine are equally valid. I think that they are. But I'm not carrying a card for the other perspective. I'm carrying a card. I'm carrying the flashlight of mine. And mine is pro-fertility. So I'm here to support other folks' ideas. I'm here to support alternatives to the present society. I'm here to support unheard voices in the present society. And I'm here in my daytime activities as much as I possibly can to create more fertility, to sell produce at lower prices, to have people have a more fertile life. That's how I see it. So, in the last few minutes of the show tonight, I want to talk about all of my programs echo fertility, because everyone's talking about it. Everyone's talking about their perspective. Everyone's talking about what they want to do, or everyone's talking about their art project, or their song, or their passion, or what they feel they need to be doing. To me, it's very important to orchestrate having people feel comfortable, having people want to go out and pursue their passion. Pardon me. And there's two ways to do that. You can either say, I'm the gardener, and I'm going to nurture the soil and create conditions that support all of these various plants. Because I know when I make space for all of these various plants, the community that is the result is more vibrant than the community with monoculture for 5. So when I have 2,000 plants growing, the communication and the bacteria that are supported and the sugars that go through the soil give that soil the most wonderful colonies of different types of bacteria. And those different types of soil bacteria and soil life give back to the plants a massively boosted level of fertility. And how does that reflect? And that reflects in me being able to pick what I want to eat from that garden and have it support me expanding the possibilities of what I want to do by being able to open up new fertility within my own body, opening up the conduit in different ways to my SELF capital. So that's what I'm looking at as far as gardening. And that's what I'm looking at as far as consciously saying, this is what I'm growing. I'm growing a garden. I'm growing a garden inside my body. I'm growing a garden connection to my soul. I'm bringing other people into a similar relationship, whether they understand it or not, with their own garden. And I'm looking around in the world and saying, I want to form connections with better gardeners so that I can get better things to eat, to learn the process. That's a continuous improvement. It's not a cycle. It's not we're going to lose everything at one point. It is a building of one layer on top of another layer and an improvement of the quality of life. Not a steady state. Not the wheel goes round and round. That is the present society. That's the way the present society views things. Society of lack of knowledge past. Society of lying. In the last few minutes, I'd like to talk about, once again, my produce club. And if you live in a city, if you live in the Philadelphia area, please send me an email at ritter.alan88@gmail.com. That's ritter.alan88@gmail.com. Send me an email. Ask me about produce. Because those people who are within 75 miles of Philadelphia should be taking advantage of the huge savings on organic and conventional produce. It's normal commercial agriculture. It's dead soil sprayed with obnoxious chemicals, both organic and conventional, both sprayed with noxious chemicals. But eating whole plants is a great first step. Eating whole plants. Watch Dr. Michael Greger's yearly video, How Not to Die. Watch the 2018 How Not to Die. Find out why eating whole plants is the way to go as a first step. Second step, of course, is to eat whole plants that were grown in fertile soil, as I just sort of described as a gardener. You want to have fertile soil instead of dead soil, which is most organic and most conventional farms. Not all of them, of course. Some of them have some fertility in the ground. If you are in another city, has a produce wholesaler, you can also start like I started. Ask questions. Hey, what do you sell? Do you sell to the public? Can I buy from you? What are your prices? Do you have seconds? What the heck is a second? A second is, okay, they have 50 pallets of tomatoes and they get to the end of the tomatoes and there's still a pallet left or half a pallet. You need to move it. And they discount the price even below wholesale. And then they're basically like, get that off of my floor. There's more coming in tomorrow. They move it to another location. They put a last chance, almost free price on it. Phenomenon that I've seen. The Philadelphia port, I believe that's the same phenomenon. And these guys don't reinvent the wheel in another city. So in Miami, in New York City, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, and many, many, many other areas, there are produce wholesalers. It is here we go. We go rush out. We work in the society for a certain amount of wages, and then we want to rush out to horribly expensive retailers of produce to buy our produce, and we're completely dissatisfied because you can't buy enough. You'd like to eat more whole produce, but you can't do it. So let's grow your own. Number one, grow your own. Number two, find out where not your own is sold as cheaply as possible in your area. It's really an amazing step in your life to acknowledge your right. No matter where your head is at, no matter if the present society calls you mad, calls you crazy, calls you a criminal, you are right following your way of life. And to have the confidence in your way of life, to have enough confidence in your way of life, to not have to compare yourself through laborious research, through argument, through logic, to not have to do any of that, to not have to waste your time. It's not a waste of time if you're doing it. To not have to spend your time doing that if you don't need to. Have enough respect for yourself to say, this society just doesn't feel right to me. I mean, I took a couple of drinks from their pool, and that's not what I want to do in my life. And literally to walk away at that point and say, I have enough confidence in myself, and maybe not to know, but this whole logical assessment. Basically say, this present society just doesn't work for me, and I need to do something else. I don't understand what it is, but I need to do something else. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope this show was valuable. Hi, good evening. Do you want to be on the show?
Tuning in to see what you were, talking about specifically. I read the synopsis, but I don't know. I just tuned in. So, can you tell me?
So in general, I was talking about respecting your own feelings about how you want to live your life. And some people, myself included, have gone through a lot of research about understanding how the present society does its business in order to be able to justify why I want to go in a different direction. But to actually sit there and say, I don't really need to do that because my way is a valid way, their way is a valid way, and I don't need to compare myself to them. I can just do what I feel is important to me. But you don't have to talk about that if you don't want to talk about that.
Well, it sounds like a healthy approach because then you just seem to be able to focus on your own path.
Mm-hmm.
And not, have the comparisons of the distractions to what others are doing and being more comfortable with internal referencing.
Yeah, we all, as I said earlier in the program, and you probably weren't listening, we all get thrown into compulsory education, and we don't have an immediate respect for our own thoughts. We're taught a deep respect for the consensus perspective, and for however you achieve it, you start saying, "But hey, I don't feel like that," or "Hey, I don't do business like that," or for some reason, "Hey, my way points over in that direction, and the society seems to be going in this direction." And I'm 57, and it's taken me a lot of those years to go through all of the breaking away and then researching, saying, well, why do I feel this way? Try to rationally justify it. And just in the past week or two, and including today, I've come to understand that you don't have to justify it. So that's, in a super nutshell, that's what tonight's little program is about.
Well, I guess that's a liberating awareness. What I find is it's not just the formalized education process, but it's also child rearing. I think when I think it's I think children get very bad images of themselves because there's a number of reasons, but there's two factors that I see as really prominent, and that is that children are talked out of their feelings quite frequently to be socialized.
Mm-hmm.
But and I don't, so being socialized is generally, I think it's a favorable concept, and I think it allows us to live among others with certain expectations and so forth. But I think where the harm is that too much and kind of overrule children's feelings. And children get talked out of their feelings rather than allowing children to have their feelings, but saying that it's appropriate to act this way or that way. And why do you have feelings that are opposed to that? Rather than talking to children as to why they have feelings that way, and they might not be able to explain. But or rather than saying you can have your feelings, but you can't have your way, and this is the way that we do it. But like in all kinds of ways. Like sometimes children don't feel particularly social when parents have friends over and the parents want to introduce the child to the friends and want them to hug this one or smile at that one, and then maybe the child's not in the mood, or maybe the child doesn't like that particular one for some reason, and they're sort of like forced to behave how the parent wants them to right at that moment, like on command.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And another thing, I think people get talked out of their own guiding feelings that way. When feelings guide us, that's when, we get talked out of those guiding feelings. I think that's when it's important, and also to know the difference between guiding feelings and other feelings that might be counterproductive to us being able to be social. And then another thing I see is, and I just, like, this is kind of like, I think a very big thing is I think that children get very bad self-images because when adults behave poorly, people say you're acting like a child. And I think that's a very poor image for children, because I think children have a certain purity, and I think adults with baggage and bad behavior or not acting like children. But I think it sends a poor message to children to lower their self-esteem.
Yeah,
And
very true. Yep.
okay, so I mean, I just don't really see a fair comparison, and I don't see how that would favor children at all. And I think that would tend to make children feel bad about being children, and hence the part of the desire to just grow up very quickly or get away from being a child, because it's bad adults or children basically. So they want to get out of that and grow up fast.
Yeah, it's interesting that you have that. Well, one of my other guiding principles is that we don't get experiences that we shouldn't have. So even I don't look at experience as being a negative. I look at it all as being training to fill in gaps of your character. And when you're talked out of your feelings, it's just another, even if it's called childish, it's just another puzzle that you revisit and you say, okay, at what point in my development, in what point in my sequence of experiences am I actually going to look at myself and say, I completely respect my own way, and I'm going to move along it. I'm very grateful that you called in, because you just added a lot of a different perspective, and growing up as a child and being induced to cast aside your own direction for consensus behavior, or this is the way we do it, is sort of the first step in, and it's not, I don't want to have people think, hey, you've lost your way, because we never lose our way. We're always having experiences that are valuable to us. But then many years later, you might circle around or recapture that initial spark and have more respect for it.
Yes, I see what you're saying as well. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
What I don't like to do, I like to take words out of the language like failure and evil, and I like to put words into the language in place of them. Instead of failure, I like to put in training or practice. And then instead of evil or bad, I just put in the general term like needed experience, so that life becomes universally positive instead of having pitfalls, because, hey, I'm training. I don't understand why I'm receiving this experience now, but I'm receiving it, and it's obviously training for my wholeness. So that's one of the other things that I like to refer to.
Well, that's very interesting, because those words bring about a different thought process and a different appreciation and a different view.
Yeah, I put myself in a real pickle several times, sort of within the last 10 years, and in order to keep functioning, I sort of had to pass through a personal logic puzzle that basically said, no, there aren't ups and downs, it's all ups, because you're just continuing to add, another little experience to your backlog, and another, every second we're brought more and more experiences. Well, who brings us those? Well, we bring them to ourselves. We don't understand why we're bringing them, because we're not our capital S, capital E, capital L, capital F. We're not that. We're this front little actor receiving those things without the omniscient mind or the omniscient view of the quote-unquote person we work for, or the person that we really are. So I look at that as being, we're just building another wing on another coping mechanism, or we're just fleshing out more ways or more arms or more facilities to use in order to make ourselves capable of doing this job, or being able to do mental gymnastics over there in order to be able to communicate, cope, help in another sphere of mental endeavor.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I was introduced in 2005. I was introduced to Rumi basically saying, out beyond the notions of right doing and wrong doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. And when I'm given like a truism like that, of course we try to take it apart. We try to smash it. We try to beat it with a hammer and have it fall apart. And plenty of other truisms do fall apart. But that one didn't fall apart for me. It actually came to me when I was in a particularly bad way and shone a light where I thought there was universal darkness. And the light it basically shone was saying, no, there is no darkness. There is no dark and light. It's all light. And once you're I was forced to understand that it's all playtime. It's all positive. It's all adding positive bits that we don't understand to ourselves. Life just becomes, all of life becomes complete fun.
That's a real innovative use, not only of the language, but those few words you use to describe cut through huge swathes of judgments and assumptions that are operating in society.
Well, the fun part is you can look at all those judgments and say, okay, those were mental puzzles I had to go through in order to get to here. And then you can look back at your whole life, and you can look at the attitudes that you had towards certain events, and all the tension is relieved. Was all fine. So all of the people pointing, or you go outside and people are still pointing, and you just smile because it's okay.
Wow. You've really come to some realizations. Really appreciate your path. It's very courageous. Are you, when you talk about social consensus, are you also talking about external referencing when maybe the focus is best placed on the internal, self-directed, rather than looking outside for?
So one of the
acceptance or
one of the concepts.
To...
one of the concepts I was playing with tonight was the consensus way is, nothing that we see outside of ourselves isn't anything but an echo of our own mind. So I can't tell what you see in society, tell what I see in society, but I only see an echo pattern of my own psychology. So if we look at the world and we say, this no longer does it for me, it's not that the world that you're seeing is external to yourself. You're seeing who you were. You're seeing your old self when you echo into the world. You see the society and you say, I don't point fingers at it and say that's wrong. I point fingers at it and say, I built that. That's me. But it doesn't work for me anymore to move on. I need to go in a different direction. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. What I'm wondering is how that actually looks in your life, like with respect to maybe patterns of interaction that have established themselves in various types of friendships or relationships of sorts, acquaintances and so forth. What does that look like? Do some of them fade away?
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting, because if you have friends that you've had for several years, and I've noticed this in my own life, I have patterns of communication or devices that I use to communicate with people, or habitual conversation, things that I would say in conversation. And one of the things that I would always do in conversation is put barbs or put things that other people can trip over in conversation to sort of tease, or actually to be a little bit of a jerk, or maybe more than a little bit of a jerk. And that would maybe that person wouldn't pick up on how I was saying that, but it would distance them from me, even because of the energy that I was putting into it, because their mind would get it and they would say, well, why is this person saying such a thing to me? And now that I'm a happier person, and now that I really want to get to know people, because I want to know more about them, I want to know more on a deeper level, sometimes I find myself thinking that I should say something like that again. I find myself in the old habit. The words are almost about to come out of my mouth, or I write an email and I look at the words and I'm like, oh, I just caught myself. I was about to send a piece out that had something in it, but I don't. But that's the old me, and the new me doesn't say things like that. Or I actually have to say, I don't want to say things like that anymore, or I don't want to write things like that anymore. So we have such a huge scope of behavior and mind, and the way we do things is when I realize something, or when I say, oh my gosh, that's actually, if I reinterpret something on a large scale, that echoes through me walking through my life with the impact on my behavior of that realization for at least months and possibly years, because we don't go back and use absolutely everything. Once a year we might actually say, well, gee, I haven't talked to this person, or I haven't used this particular device of communication in quite a while. Oh my gosh, it's old and crusty. It has all of this old baggage on it, and I was about to use it, but no, I have to dust it off and put oil on it and re-envision it in in the way I do business now.
Okay. Would that be called behavior modification?
I guess so.
Okay. Because the thoughts still arise, but you're not acting on them, and you're catching yourself and making a more conscious decision of how you want to be.
Well, yeah, there was a pattern that was created, let's say, just at age 25, and that was the pattern that was the same for 30 years or however long it's been in place. And then you go to use it again, and you look at it and you say, oh, my overall operating procedure doesn't work that way anymore. I don't have the baggage that I don't have the I don't do business like that anymore. I do business like this. But as I walk through my life, things come up and I need to dust them off and modify my behavior. Yeah, behavior modification is right, but it's as a result of an across the board realization that happens in an instant. But if you say, oh, these behaviors were hardwired into the brain, let's say it's a neural pathway that was made one way, when you have the realization, they don't all get changed and they're not all rewired in a different way. You actually have to go in when you use it and say, oh no, this needs to be dissolved and needs to be built up in a different way. But at that point, it's rewired, if that makes any sense.
It does, because I don't have the same clarity or description that you do, or memory, actually. I just know that there's times when I go to respond to certain interactions where I stop and think, now, is this what I really want to say? Is this, how can I best handle it? And I would sometimes take a few hours or a few days, or as long as I would need, and I would, mull something over, or put it in the back of my mind, or I would write out something to myself several times before I would actually send a message or tell somebody something or convey what I wanted to say. Whereas before, it would just almost be like an automatic response. This wasn't with everything, but it's just with certain things that would trigger me or inflame me or that I would get upset about. And I would just really kind of react, and not in a way that I chose or thought about. And when something happens now and I go to think of what I want to say, I can't quite tell you what I would have done before. But I know that what I'm thinking about now is considerably different than what I would have done before. I'm not just reacting. I'm actually considering how I want to convey something. And I think before, I did not have tools to understand what was going on or the dynamics. And I just, things that would happen would trigger me, and I knew they would be wrong, and I would just lash out in my own way, or just react and spitfire something. But as a reaction to it, and knowing that it was wrong somehow for me, or I don't know about the word wrong, but somehow it was unhealthy for me or not suitable to me or triggered something in me. I don't know how to describe it, but now I'm able to see the dynamics of it and what's going on. And so because I have that clarity of actually transpiring and I'm able to track it and write about it and understand what got muddled or who grabbed the power or who didn't play by the rules or where it broke down, because I have those skills now that I didn't have before, I'm able to sit down and sort things out and then make decisions about where I want to go from here. Is it a pattern in a relationship?
Yeah, it's also interesting to put yourself in the interaction alone and not to say there's another person who grabbed power or there's another person. It's what I have found useful is to remove the morality from the situation, just to look at the mathematics of what the interaction was and to understand it from that perspective rather than to judge anyone. So I don't know if you were judging anyone. Go ahead.
When you say the mathematics, do you mean basically factually this happened, then that person did that,
right.
and that happened?
So
there's
society, the society that we're in is all about light and dark. And what it does is it trains us to have emotional reactions to based on the circumstances of the actions. So how I like to refer to it is I like to refer to it as if someone is playing on your emotions, they're painting a picture of light and dark. So I like to take a step back from that and say, what is the evidence presented, or I just say, what is the mathematics of what just happened? So I like to basically say, okay, in a very dry way, what happened? And if you look at it from that perspective, and you say, well, there wasn't anything right or wrong here. I wish to interpret this from an experience, what just happened in experience land, because in experience land, this was very positive for me, as is every instant and every experience that happens every instant, because I'm building, what I refer to as a capital S self, or the capital S self manifested this experience to come to me, and it's a valuable experience. So
well, now when you use the word, so what? Okay, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So when you say don't judge, I'm not sure how you're actually using that, because
so the words that I heard you say was someone grabs power or someone does something like that. And if you can remove the idea that other individuals are present and just say the echo of my mind manifested these circumstances for me, this is a gift. What just happened to me is a gift. It doesn't include other people. It's a gift. It's a play in which I was the only individual present. It's a movie. This is incredibly valuable to me. I'm receiving it as the most incredibly positive experience that my soul wishes to build with. Then things become universally positive, and you're able to receive it with a smile, or lose the smile because it's all positive. But things no longer have the charge that they once had. You don't look at one person and said that person grabbed power. you look at that and say, there isn't another person. I'm just seeing how myself is putting me in a circumstance.
Well, that's a whole nother level of self-responsibility or some kind of awareness of.
So you look out at the society, and previously you might have said, well, such and such an individual is doing this, whereas if you look out at the society and say, that's a complete echo of me. There isn't another person out there. Now, I know that you're another person, I'm talking to you, but you're looking out, and your perspective is actually forming the universe that you perceive.
Yes. I can go along with that. What about can I describe a situation that happened, and then could you help me reformulate it then according to what you're describing?
Go ahead. You're my guest. Be my guest.
Because I'm going to say she did this and she did that.
Absolutely.
and okay. And then reformulate it so it's an echo in my mind and what I'm to learn, or how I would respond to something that I'm perceiving as outside myself.
I'll do my best.
Okay. A comment from somebody about, I needed to change my swimwear in the pool, and then an acquaintance, a somewhat new one. And then, I need to change my cap and my suit and get this kind and get that kind. And then I've been thinking of business ideas, so I just mentioned one idea of something that was inspiring to me. And she immediately said, no, do this, or something like that. And then I previously had dinner at this one restaurant, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought she would too, based upon the kind of food and diet she likes. And so she said that she's sorry she missed it or something, and maybe we could have dinner there, and she looked really forward to it. And so 2-3 weeks have passed, and she was her life, I have mine. I see her at the pool, things like that. So then she says, well, Saturday night. And I said, okay. And so last night, and so then instead of following up about the restaurant I had described, she mentioned, she says, we meet at this time at this and she describes the kind of food they serve, and I said, well, what's the name of it? Texting back and forth, and so she texts me the name of the restaurant, and I looked at their menu, and I couldn't find anything, and I didn't really like the place, and it was too far for me, and this and that. So, but in the meantime, she had written to me and said, I just said, what's the name of the place? And then she wrote back with the answer, and then she put 8 p.m. was to meet her there at 8 p.m. So she's choosing the place and the time. So I kind of felt left out of the process. And I didn't know what happened to this other place. If she didn't want to go there, that's fine. But and then she says, well, if you want to go to another place, we can. Well, the whole thing started with going to another place. So to me, it just a lot of confusion happened, and she seemed to just sort of take over with the decision making, sort of left a few things out, and it wasn't really a rally back and forth about, what should we include or what's mutually agreeable. If she decided she didn't want to go to that other place, that's fine. So I'm left with kind of, she's making all these decisions, and it kind of follows some criticism she gave of me that was unsolicited advice, get this kind of a swimsuit. Well, I'm happy with the one I have. And so I felt it kind of her sort of like taking over or advising or I was her subject somehow. It didn't. It started to feel a bit oppressive. So how would you?
So
I mean, how?
Here's what
comment about
so
that.
Here's
maybe?
what I'm.
Okay.
Here's what I'm getting. Here's what I'm getting from the interaction. You can see. You can see that this. You can see on several levels. How seriously this other person takes your input. Because you did some development and you basically put out your thoughts on, in this case, the restaurant, and they already had an agenda of where they wanted to go. So relationships are difficult, but they're also instructive because you can see very quickly how this person, I don't want to be abrasive, but I just want to say how this person cares for how you feel.
Okay.
And do you see their lack of care?
Yes.
So they're not respecting your choices. They're not respecting the level of research that you put into your own clothing. They're immediately saying that that's displeasing to them and you should get something else. They're not respecting the level of they're not respecting your tastes because you said, hey, I've actually thought about, you didn't say this outright, but you said to me, understand to the best of my ability how this person wants to eat, and I've picked out a restaurant that I think would fit them well, and they're not respecting your level of thought process going into your suggestion. So there's two ways to feel about that interaction. From a I'm the only person here interaction, the universe is basically asking you, are you willing to put up with this? And from a mathematical standpoint, not from an emotional standpoint, from a mathematical standpoint, if you say yes, you're going to run into more people that you're willing to interact with who don't respect you.
Oh,
but if you say to the universe, I mean, it's a pain in the ass to basically blow someone off. But if you blow this person off, and you continue to hear the echo back from yourself, hey, are you willing to put up with someone who doesn't say, oh, I respect the quality of the research that you've done in order to be able to suggest this restaurant to you, to me. Thank you for caring so much. If it is possible to actually look at that person and say, I really think there's something here. Now you could actually say, hey, I'd like to take apart our interaction that we had the other day to a deeper level, and you can basically say to them, do you realize that I thought about all of this evidence that you've given me about what you like to eat, and that I compared it favorably with this restaurant that I suggested because I feel that you would like to eat there, plus I know that I would like to eat there. And you might be able to this is obviously making yourself vulnerable, but you also want to learn at a deeper level whether this person is someone that you want to continue interacting with. So in order to learn that, in order to become the student and actually learn about this other person at a deeper level, you have to make yourself truly vulnerable. Now, of course, we're not vulnerable but it's vulnerable on an emotional level. So what I say is toss out the emotional vulnerability, because human contact and human interaction is very stimulates learning, and part of that learning is change, and part of change is pain. So the more pain you're willing to put yourself in, the more you're going to learn. So there's multiple levels. You can just look at this person and say, I'm going to blow you off because you don't respect me enough. But depending on how many interactions you have, depending on whether you feel on the whole this person is a positive person, or you just want to develop more skills about how to feel into people and converse with people. Go ahead.
I see. It's just that I'm moving out of a space where I don't have to correct assumptions, or where the person hasn't postured, like making unilaterally the decision. I agreed to the day, Saturday. It was at her convenience, and I agreed to it. But I don't know if that assumption is that I'm easy and she can choose the place and the time too, without any acknowledgement of any follow-up of what was on the table before of where we would eat. I mean, literally, it was the topic of discussion. So it was just ignored, like you said, no consideration was given.
You can look at this and say the universe is saying, okay, this person is completely beyond what I want to have in my life. That might be, you can make that, you can make that quote unquote snap your finger decision. And you can say, this isn't quite working out. I'm glad for the interactions that we've had, but I need to move in a different direction. That's one way. That's one way to look at it, right?
Yes. Now that is one way to look at it. That's a healthy way to look at it. There's obviously some good about this person, I think, but on the other hand, if she always makes me feel little or left out, or disrespected or not considered, then that if I raise the issue of I'd rather out here, the way she postured it, any comment from me would seem like an objection or an argument. If I had been considered during the process of it, it would have merely been a discussion where we could include and exclude back and forth on an equal basis. But once she has made a choice for both of us, then any comment I make seems like an objection or an argument or a complaint. So the posturing and the setup disadvantages me and advantages her by going ahead and doing that.
I wouldn't. So what I would say that you could come back with, I didn't feel comfortable going to the restaurant last night because I wasn't involved in the process, and here's where I thought the process was, and then all of a sudden you came back and made these two decisions. And she might have made those decisions because time was of the essence, So I wouldn't look at someone else and say, and go to the extreme of saying, they grabbed all the power in the situation and made some decisions, at the same time consciously disregarded what I wanted or what I had suggested. It's a longer process to actually say, I really value our friendship. I'd like to sit down and talk about the interactions that we had over this last week, because I want to understand for myself, and I want you to understand sort of my thought process. And then you can find out if that person actually wants to be conscious of themselves. Because you're not someone, because you want a conscious partner. You want someone, you are basically conscious of your own behavior, and agreeing or disagreeing or having all your gears mesh is not, that's a goal in a relationship. That's a goal. What you want to be able to say to that person is, hey, I'm a set of gears operating like this. You're a set of gears operating like that. We don't mesh right now. But what I want to be able to understand from you as a partner or as an acquaintance is, are you willing to talk about the two sets of gears? That's what you want. That's the conversation you want to have with this person. You want to say, I'm a gear mechanic, or you a gear mechanic?
I think you really thank you. Those are all very good suggestions and very good approaches with a lot of clarity.
I don't like
and
to,
they all
I don't like
identify
to say,
something.
Yeah, I don't like to smash. I don't like to wreck cars unless they need to be wrecked, right? I don't like to walk away from people unless it's absolutely required.
Okay. It also it really goes to the heart of it when you said, if this person wants to have be conscious of her interactions as well. Does she want to be conscious of what she's doing?
See, there's a million friends out there, and they're not really friends until you can basically say, hey, this is my hobby. I like to get under my own hood. Do you like to get under your own hood? Then there's a whole new level of interaction. Just a suggestion.
Yes. Yeah. Very interesting and very helpful.
So
very interesting.
If you want to email me and continue this conversation at another time, my email address is ritter@alan88@gmail.com. And I'm on Facebook under Alan Ritter. I have a small, I don't think you're in the Philadelphia area, looking at your zip code, looking at your area code, but I have a small produce. You're where? You're sort of where?
I'm actually in Florida, but it's not in Philadelphia.
That's a lot warmer than the area I'm at.
Okay. And could you
I will be
tell
posting
me your
this.
email
I have
again?
a channel. You what?
Could you please tell me your email again?
Oh, RITTER period LAN 88 at gmail.com.
Okay. And you have a Facebook and something else were you saying too? Thank you.
So I have a produce club in this area where I sell wholesale produce to folks. The other thing I have is I have a YouTube channel where I repost recordings with a cover on them. So I'll be posting this, and I think it would be especially useful to you to listen to it again.
Yes, it would, especially to hear it from the beginning.
Right, because to hear sort of the part where you weren't involved.
Yes, I wasn't tuned in yet. Yes, so yes, and then to hear what you had to say again also. But I really like
what's your first name?
Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
So I just recorded your number in case I don't hear from you, because I think that you basically changed your perspective a little bit tonight, and I like to help people let go of negative feelings about everything and start to consume a complete positive life. And I'm not talking about some religious. All I'm talking about is the mathematics of life, not the emotionalism of life. And to be able to say, hey, I can go do that now because I don't feel that it's a negative experience. I feel that everything's a learning experience. So, hey, life has been talking to me about going and doing that. I'm just going to go do it. Maybe I won't talk to my friends who would see that in a negative light, but, get on about building your capital S self, right?
Yes, and yes, very, very much. I appreciate your insights as well as your journey.
Yeah, as far as pain goes, I had to put myself into some pretty mentally uncomfortable positions in order to be able to say, no, it's not all dark, it's all light. And once you flip that switch and it's all light, your feet can go into some pretty interesting locations, and you can have some pretty interesting experiences and come out smiling because it's all good.
Very nice. It's really very, very different paradigm.
Yeah, it's
for me.
The present society is all about, hey, nature doesn't have morals. Lions don't have rules. Lions are lions. Societies have rules, and they destroy your natural capability to walk everywhere and be yourself everywhere and to experience everything. So governments and the societies they create are non-fertile beasts. And the name the name of my radio show is An Emerging Forest, and I'm trying to interest other people in being whole and in seeing that everything is for them to experience in wholeness, whatever that means.
Well, that's really beautiful. I appreciate your course and thoughts and care tonight, as well as your analysis. Thank you so much.
All right. So have a great night. Have a great week. Drop me an email, and I'll follow up with you in a couple of days if I don't hear from you. You can say, I don't want to hear from you again when I call, but I'll follow up with you in a couple of days. So
thank you, Alan.
Have a great week. Have a great week, and here's the closer. So good night.
Good night, Alan. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being my guest on the show.
thanks for listening to the Spiritual Unity Radio Network. Join us 7 nights a week for exciting programming covering a variety of expressions of faith. And remember, all manifestations of the divine are equally valid.